Welcome to Sustainability Now, an exploration of technologies and paradigms to shape a world that works. Designed for socially conscious entrepreneurs and individuals interested in responsible stewardship of the planet. Sustainability Now covers food, energy, housing, water, waste, health, economics, and consciousness. Welcome to your community, Sustainability Now, with your host, Mira Rubin.
Welcome, everybody, to Sustainability Now, technologies and paradigms to shape a world that works. I'm your host, Mira Rubin, and we have a really special guest today, Ryland Engelhart. From hip-hop recording studios to vegan restaurants, filmmaker to his current role as executive director and co-founder of Kiss the Ground. First and foremost, Ryland is an emissary for love and gratitude, bringing the sacred to commerce and to the regenerative healing of our planet. Ryland, I am so happy to welcome you today.
Thank you so much, Mira. I appreciate that sweet introduction and framing. And it's great to be with you and happy to share.
You have lived such a rich life and covered such a broad spectrum of experience. But the thing that excites me the most about speaking to you, I found out about you actually because of your movie Kiss the Ground and the organization Kiss the Ground. But once you and I connected, the thing that excites me most about this opportunity to talk together is that you're bringing the spiritual to commerce, to creating change in the world in a really profound way. First through your restaurants, which are plant-friendly, vegan-oriented restaurants, and then through storytelling, the May I Be Frank film, and now Kiss the Ground. So you are making waves in the world, but the underlying driver for you is love and gratitude. And I just want to talk about how there is room for that in the workplace. There is room for that in the world. And that's how we're going to change the world. So I'm so excited to be talking to you.
Thank you. I really, I think your assessment and observation and that really my life has been a journey of searching and creating and aspiring to create more love and more transformation in the world. I came from a family that was aspiring to do that as well. And I didn't fall far from the apple tree that they grew. And it's interesting. I just someone actually one of my dear friends and one of the co-producers of the film May I Be Frank sent me a photo just today, or actually last night, of me, Frank, my dad, my brother Carrie, and Connor, who was the co-producer of the film. And it was the day that we signed a contract with Frank that he was going to sort of surrender to our guidance for 42 days while we would feed him and while we would guide him through a process of transformation. And, we had lots of ideas and thoughts of how that would look. And we took him through this book that my parents had written called The Abounding River Logbook, which was a 42-day practice in being abundance through the practices of generosity, gratitude, creativity, responsibility, worth, and abundance. And as you'd go through this book, you'd take on these different practices. And that was kind of the framework for besides him eating raw food for 42 days that we took him through. And then, the film ended up taking us 7 years to make.
Wow.
And, ended up many times just being something we were going to give up on, and ended up, turning into a film that won many film festivals and has been seen all around the world. And it truly transformed Frank's life. I was in touch with him just a couple weeks ago. And the kind of miracle is that that experience and that experiment and that kind of aspirational project of creating the story of a man's transformation was the thing that led me to New Zealand, which led me to the creation of Kiss the Ground and that awakening. So there's definitely been a theme and a whisper of how can I use my life to awaken more love. We used to say that we aspire to be leaders in the awakening of love. That's what our family was out to do with Café Gratitude and with May I Be Frank and with Kiss the Ground.
Well, the thing that I'm so delighted and awed by is that you've been really wildly successful at pretty much everything you've done. And I think that there's often, as we think of the world and success by traditional metrics, there's often a deep disconnect between a commitment to love and gratitude, or spirituality, if we want to call it that, and worldly success and transformation. And you've got a winning formula from top to bottom. Pretty much all of the ventures that you, not to say that they didn't have their pitfalls and their challenges, but you have really taken your vision and brought it forward in the world to make really dramatic change in the world and awakening.
Yeah, I there's truth to that, and there's and there's been incredible challenge, and to this day, to this moment, the ideals that we espouse and are committed to, and there's absolutely a very, very challenging balance to walk of how to create organization and something that works and produces something and has efficiency and productivity, and being connected to and desiring to create more than just the product itself, and having an aspiration to create transformation for the human beings that are the pieces of the puzzle of your organization that you are building and working. And so going back to Café Gratitude and Gracias, Madre, we've had many lawsuits, and
Really?
Yeah. And a lot of resistance to what we were doing. So it's I don't want to paint a picture of that we've just been, successful and it's
cruising.
It hasn't. It's been rocky and challenging. That one of my mentors says that there's a force field of business that's almost unbreakable. That's a force field you can't, which is driving towards profit, productivity, efficiency, and
at the cost of humanity in many cases. Yes.
and then the pendulum swing has swung on in the other direction, which is where we try to spend too much time on emotional well-being, space for emotional communication, and then it can just become the kind of upset has space for the upset to be always expressing, and then you create an environment or a culture where the upset can always express itself, and then that totally derails the functionality and of what's happening within the organization.
Well, you brought up that you had lawsuits and like multiple. So you just piqued my curiosity. What was that about? Why would there be lawsuits?
I mean, multiple for different reasons, but the ones I guess that would be relevant for this conversation were, we had high ideals in the early days of Café Gratitude, where we were going to pay everybody equal, including the dishwashers. We were going to give health care, even when health care wasn't mandated in certain counties, but because it was mandated in San Francisco, but not in Marin, we decided, we're going to give it to everybody. And, one of the lawsuits was about, tipping the back of the house dishwashers, and then, proper break procedures, were people getting their breaks in the middle of their shift, which again, doesn't happen in any restaurant. So, we were a mom and pop business kind of without, a very, it's so, it's such a razor's edge, because the more structure and edges on things, it creates order, and it creates clarity. And then you kind of want spaciousness for, the human spirit to express, and for creativity and community and collaboration. And it's just that, and again, in the beginning, it was like totally, very little structure, and a lot of space for, collective sharing, feedback. And again, we created a lot of space for criticism, and what ended up becoming some lawsuits about improper tip allocation, even though we had signed waivers that people were okay with. So there can be a space that's so open that then creates this kind of condition where people are just continuously able to. There's a culture of being able to air complaints. And one of the challenges is that human beings, we have egos, and we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are.
Exactly.
And from the leadership to the employee, and it's a very it's a very delicate balance of how to hold structure and rigor and productivity with the spaciousness for and the desire to be connected to human beings as human beings, not just as cogs in the wheel of the production
enterprise. Yeah. Well, you were creating business as a social experiment too. I mean, that's really what it sounds like you've done.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it was absolutely a social experiment, and it was in building community. It was in, personal transformation. It was in exploration, and there was, lots of it that was amazing and worked. And, I would say that for the most part, many, and I would say the lion's share majority would say that, the restaurants were some of the best places, if not the best places people had ever worked, as far as an experience, a culture, a connectivity, a community.
No, Ryland, you're talking about it in past tense, but the restaurants still exist, right? They're still.
They do. Since 6 months ago, I've moved to my full focus on Kiss the Ground as the executive director. So my brother is now overseeing and running the operations along with our two partners, and my parents are still involved as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I just want to talk really briefly about where the movie Let Me Be Frank came from. Like, this guy came into your restaurant, not your typical customer, and there was a daily question or something.
Yeah, part of the social experiment that Café Gratitude is that we were not just serving organic plant-based food. We were serving a view of life through the lens of gratitude. Can we create a culture and an environment where gratitude is sort of the new normal? And the way we did that is, we not only did offer our food on your table, we were offering a conversation to be had over that food, and that conversation would be prompted by what was our question of the day, which was, the original question was, what are you grateful for? And then over time, we created hundreds of questions to create some, diversity in, but all in the theme of how can we move people from their head to their heart? How can we move people from their mind or, sort of something's wrong, something's missing, to what is fulfilled, what is enough right now? And can we practice to bring ourselves into a state of gratitude consciously, and have the restaurant be the environment that is a place that continuously awakens something and brings us back to that practice. And so, Frank was a customer who came in looking for a coffee. We didn't have coffee. He thought Café Gratitude was part of the recovery program, because recovery, there's a big piece of gratitude in AA programs, and looked around, didn't see any coffee, didn't even see any food that he recognized, because, we were serving, dehydrated, sun-dried tomato, sunflower sprout burgers on buckwheat crackers with, kimchi and tahini dressing and such. And he was like, that food doesn't look very good. But what's going on in here? And he asked if it was a recovery joint. And I said, we're all recovering from something. And he in turn knew that we weren't a recovery joint. And he, as he says, he thought I was totally high. I wasn't. I maybe was high on green juice, maybe. But anyways, I asked him the question of the day, this was kind of a little bit more of a radical question, which is what's one thing you want to do before you die? And he said, I want to fall in love one more time before I die, but I don't think anyone's going to love me because I don't love myself. I almost get choked up just saying that right now.
I got chills.
And I just was like, whoa, that hit me straight in the heart. And that struck the thought, or the idea that we had after the film Super Size Me came out, to what if we could bring someone from sickness to health through the principles and philosophies of Café Gratitude, and let thy medicine be thy food and food be thy medicine. And so it was just clear that he was the guy to take that experiment on. And so I asked him in that moment, would you like to try an experiment and allow us to champion you to have a different life through your food and through your philosophy and through your thoughts and beliefs and actions. And he said yes. He was kind of in a depressed state and didn't have a lot of friends, and his family relations were kind of in not in kind of shambles, and so he said yes, and we we ended up signing a contract and buying a camera, a video camera, used video camera from my friend who lived in LA at the time, and we built a kind of a boom stand from a PVC pipe at Ace Hardware, and we just set out to make a movie about this with no real experience. And again, I think most everything I've done in life didn't have a good plan. It had a passionate possibility of healing and of transformation and being a story that could impact others. And that led to finding and building a community of experts and a community of people who have the skill set to actually turn it into the maturity and the fruition of a real project or a complete project. And
I'd love you to talk about the transition from Café Gratitude to Kiss the Ground, because it's a whole new world. And maybe just let people understand what Kiss the Ground is as part of the regenerative movement.
Yeah. So I went to New Zealand about 8 years ago to speak at a healthy living conference on sacred commerce, and actually with Frank Ferrante to show the film and do a Q&A with him. And there I sat in a panel discussion called "Can Human Beings Sustain Themselves on Planet Earth?" And 5 out of the 6 experts said no. A guy by the name of Graham Sate said, what they're saying is true. The destruction we've done is quite quite dire, but it is reversible, and it comes down to soil and the way we work with nature and the way we do agriculture, and that we could actually harness the power of Earth itself to regenerate our soil, regenerate our nutrition, regenerate a balanced climate, regenerate our water cycle and our carbon cycle. And it was for the first time in my life, I could see a way that life could get better in the future. Up until that point, it was just kind of a slow burn towards destruction, or a slow burn towards off the cliff, driving the car off the cliff for civilization. And in that moment of really understanding and seeing the potential of how regeneration works, and that human beings could actually be helpful and productive inside of the regeneration process of our planet, while still feeding and nourishing and caring for, our population, it was, a total paradigm shift. It really blew my mind. It blew the water of, wait, how, wow, human beings can regenerate ecosystems, soil, biodiversity, and in the same way that, keystone species in ecosystems have always done that, whether it's, bison on the plains, or, sharks in a reef, that keystone species have the potential to destroy or regenerate an ecosystem, and human beings could really get our original instructions, our rightful role as, good stewards of the earth, and we could actually truly regenerate our planet. And it was a total game changer. Even though I was into organic food, I was into sustainability and veganism and green lifestyle and, minimalism, and, all those were kind of, sustaining something, but not really seeing the regeneration potential. And so that was a total game changer. And that was a kind of, at the time, a really, I would say it was a psychic and spiritual and psychological transformation where I couldn't not know, or couldn't see that potential, that possibility. And so to me, it was just the most exciting idea that I'd ever come across, that had ever kind of been illuminated to me, that human beings could reverse or balance our global warming through our eating habits, and that everyone who eats could participate in this regeneration. It was just too intuitive and too right on. And so I got back to LA, and as a restaurateur, what you do is you serve food to people and you talk to people, and you're hospitable, and you tell them what you're excited about. And I would just tell people about soil more than they probably wanted to know. And people would say, well, where do I find out more? And I started to, send people to go find the guy Graham Sate. And I realized at the time, the quality of media and communications around this idea was so minimal, and locked up in deep academia, white papers, scientific research, some very kind of obscure, marginalized, holistic, thinkers and farmers and ranchers and permaculturists, and then kind of indigenous wisdom of like understanding that we, are part of a natural system, and we can degrade it, or we can actually, or we can massage it and work in a way where it actually becomes more productive. And, there are many indigenous cultures that did understand that, and, had that, integration into their worldview and into their life. But it wasn't something that you could just search, like, how does soil help, change climate change? At that time, there was almost zero sort of consumer communication content that could be found on the line. And so that became our first, sort of mission was, we're going to communicate this message in a clear, concise way that gives people this hopeful, hit and awakening that I had. And so I started gathering people in my living room, and we built a kind of a non-informal working group that turned into a nonprofit after about 6 months. And originally we were going to be called Soilutions. I'm glad we didn't call ourselves that.
Me too.
Inspired by Rumi, the poet, who said, "Let the beauty you love be all that you do. There's hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground." Kissing the ground felt so, it was a direct expression of love, the earth. Like, it's a direct instruction: kiss the ground, love the earth. But it's also an expression of humility, that humans, and humility. Humus is a description of, healthy soil. Humans and humility, they all come from a Latin root word hum, which means of and for the earth. And so this moment of, getting that we're just a small part in this much bigger fabric of life, and can we humbly participate in serving this much bigger system of life, this ecological system, that I'm speaking about, right now, is explicitly, but also, in a more spiritual sense of like, in humility and gratitude for this bigger life experience, this bigger expression of the universe, spirit, creator, the intelligence of this universe that we are a part of, that we only can see a little piece of. And from that little piece, may we be grateful to serve and contribute. And so that's what Kiss the Ground means. And we've become a internationally recognized nonprofit for the education advocacy of regenerative agriculture. And really through, our strategies are how do we transform human and, consumer behavior from degenerative to regenerative, how do we educate people on the practices of regenerative agriculture as a solution, and how do we support and change policy to encourage access and ability for the supply chain, farming, and food systems to support and go in the direction of regenerative agriculture.
So the thing that is driving pretty much like the thread through your history here is a shift of paradigm that is essential for us to be able to implement the changes globally that we need to. And you have integrated that in the foundation of Kiss the Ground, love for the earth. And when we spoke before, you told me that you had a very profound experience that kind of acted as the guiding foundation for your life when you were, I believe, 19. And I would love it if you'd share that, because the thing that I want to bring home for folks that are listening is we all have the capacity to make a profound impact in the world. And by our growing awareness and wakefulness and connection with the earth and one another, we do have the capacity to make changes that are heart-centered, and that is the foundational paradigm shift, is to become more heart-centered and move from that place outward rather than all the problem solving, looking at, well, here's a problem, here's what we can do. It's really more driven from a greater connection, and that's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I got the shivers. The yep. Yes, absolutely. Some people call it, it's emergent, the emergent mind. That's, or the adaptive, being adaptive, because it's not just like whack-a-mole, like problem, like smash, that just makes the problem come, it's just like, no, how do we look at our lives, look at ourselves, look at our challenges through the eyes of the heart, with compassion, understanding, the complexity, the nuance, and really navigate from there versus just good, bad, right, wrong sides,
or efficiencies, or
and so there is a fundamental shift that is being asked for and called, and it's been called by many names, and it's been what is the awakening that is happening, what is the shift that's going to be, how will it be articulated, and the shift that I see as a great potential is really this potential and this shift that many astronauts have felt when they go out and they see the world, this green little marble in the sky, and they experience this deep interconnection of that life of that planet is their life, and that there is a total interconnection or interdependence, an interbeingness that is felt at a deep experiential level, and to be able to, I feel like we are becoming more connected to the ideas of interconnection. It started with like waste, like throwing things away, just throw it away from me, then where is away from me? And somebody that's not away from me onto someone else's front yard or onto someone else's lap. And so this idea of away, there is no away. There is
There's no planet B.
Yes. Yeah, we actually have a good slogan that goes along with that, which is there is no planet B. It's called regeneration. Because that we do have the potential to to regenerate, to continuously regenerate and work in a harmonious and beneficial relationship with nature, with the earth. And so you were asking about the experience that I had when I was 19. My parents, God bless them for being a little bit radical and a little bit experimental. They'd always been seekers of how to connect more deeply with God's spirit, and to be better instruments of that love. And so they had heard about this church called the I don't know the best way to, I won't say it, but basically it's a it's a federally recognized church that uses a plant medicine, actually 2 plants combined from the Amazon basin, called ayahuasca, and through the ingesting of that plant, that 2 plant substance, it creates a very psychologically enhancing state of being, where you in a lot of ways lose your self, meaning you're not thinking through I, me, my, Ryland as an identity, and kind of you experience that kind of gets obliterated, and you experience this universal energy field of life, of intelligence, of communication, of love, of supreme gratitude for the ability to connect with that presence. And it was for me, it was at a very pivotal moment in life where I was kind of a little bit depressed and disconnected, and thinking I should chase some other path, and was wondering if I should go down the technology path of chasing the .com boom in San Francisco. And I just got very clear instructions that was not my path. And I saw very kind of explicitly, in very illuminated, clear, 3-dimensional, illuminated, psychedelic, kind of, that's not your path. And what your path is to care and steward and protect the earth. And sort of at that moment, seeing in a deep, a very deep and visually illuminating way, my body being, part of the body of the earth, and my fingers being, connected to the roots of plants and trees, and just really feeling this sort of hum, vibration, energy pulsing the life of the earth, and that life of Mother Earth calling me and calling for my alliance and my devotion and my service and support. And that was at 19 years old, and I didn't know exactly what it would mature into, but looking back 20 years to now, having the insight and the creation of Kiss the Ground and that organization, it's oftentimes been said that you have these sort of expanded states of consciousness moments in the ingesting of something like a plant medicine, and the illusion or the delusion can think that one night, can you see something in an experience, and then the next day you are it, or you can become it, or it's right there. But I think the more realistic reality is that you can taste, touch, feel, know something that gives you a level of conviction, and a level of truth, and a level of certainty, and then you can spend a lifetime building things that are in fulfillment of those whispers, of those clearly experiential possibilities that you see, that and then the integration and the articulation and the development of those sort of ideas to become something in reality, take a lot longer. And
that was beautifully said. I think that's so true. I had a similar type of experience when I was 15, and it's been coming into richer and richer expression throughout my life. That for me, it was an experience of saying, I know. And all of a sudden I was catapulted into another experience of being knowing, not bounded by time or space or personality or anything like that. And it's been a movement through my life to presence myself to that again, to bring it into my daily living more and more as I evolve over time. So, but you're right. It takes, it's a tease. I don't know about you, but I had a lot of pain around it for a lot of years because I didn't know how to get back there. And I didn't know what was the point of knowing that and being here,
Yeah. The thought that just came to mind is, I think, we have these high moments, and then there's a crash, and then there's a desire to how to get back there, and an expectation that it should be easy to get back there. I mean, it plays with, all kinds of historical references of faith, and having divine insight, and then being lost for 10 years, but still having that crystalline moment that is still holds that that knowing, that faith, that belief, that truth, and
those moments that feel more real than anything else.
That's right.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the way that that evolution of consciousness works, and that there is, I remember having the thought, why many or most indigenous cultures have ceremony as part of life, and that moment of reconnecting and getting, oh wow, the point of life is to praise and to be in the awareness of the vastness and the beauty and the bounty of life, and knowing that we will forget, that we will have amnesia, and to have a structure in life where we can return to I forgot, I'm sorry, ho'oponopono, forgive me, oh wow, that experience of reverence, of praise, of humility, of reckoning,
wonder.
awe. Yeah. is such an essential, place. And it also brings us to, the place of our death. It brings us to that we're all going to be on our knees at this moment where this life is going to end. And, can we be connected to that level of surrender, that level of trust, that level of knowing that there's life beyond this form, and preparing us for that moment, and that life is going to be ultimately an expression, a continuation of letting go. Yeah. There's no escaping that life is going to continue to ask us to let go of everything we physically build, everything we build in our mind, our intellect, our skill sets, are all these things, to see professors, and then they lose their they lose, our loving relationships, and then our lover at the end doesn't know who we are. It's like,
right. I could talk to you forever. I have so many questions, and I know that our time remaining today is really short. So I do want to let people know that they will provide links to Let Me Be Frank, and to Kiss the Ground, the organization, and Kiss the Ground, the film, and also the restaurants, so that people can see what we're talking about. We're going to put that on our website at sustainabilitynow.global. But I also wanted to ask you about the regenerative agriculture incorporates animals as a foundational part of regenerating the soil. And the restaurants are vegan, plant focused. And I'm curious about reconciling those approaches. How does that work for you?
Great question. It was another big kind of initiation and transformation and criticism and blowback, and as I started to understand and learn more and study the principles and practices and the ecological interconnection of life that causes regeneration, animals certainly became a very key element to that map, and to that the equation of how land gets regenerated, and that the richest soils on the planet were created in the partnership between grasses and bovines, grass-eating herd animals. And so in one way, it started off where my dad started growing. He went and bought a vegetable farm in Northern California when we were running Café Gratitude in Northern California some 13 years ago, and started growing organic vegetables. And in doing that, he started to realize, one, there was very few organic vegan farmers, like almost none. Mm-hmm. And that most farmers, once you started farming and actually tending to how do you get soils to produce this, these vegetables, and a lot of the inputs to do that come from the backs of animals, or the butts of animals, dung and urine, but mostly dung. And in that process, it was like, all right, well, the most humane and effective way is to have animals living on that farm, integrated into that farm. And then, a farm is an ecosystem that's providing nourishment for those that are stewarding it. But it's also, if you're going to be a serious farmer, it needs to be a business, because otherwise you can't afford to do it if you're not, if you're not able to sell and have that farm be a generative business. And so, within the whole ecosystem, to have cows as part of the ecosystem, what we discovered is like, all right, if to have this whole system, there needs to be different micro enterprises and businesses, and cow products, whether it's cheese, milk, eggs, became essential as part of the whole ecosystem, the economic ecosystem. And then, you have people who eat meat on the farm. So it's like, all right, well, if we're going to, have this ecosystem that depends on these creatures as part of this ecosystem, which ultimately is stewarding life and death, any farm, any ecosystem, natural environment is life and death, and that the architecture of this physical world is that things die and become the nutrients for something else to grow. And that inside of that architecture that is, older than any ideas that we have about it, is the fundamental architecture of this planet. And so to mimic natural systems in the most effective way to create a place, a farm, a region healthy, there needs to be that integration of life and death, and all the species that are interacting. And a good biodynamic farm recognizes that and understands that there is this continual life-death cycle, but ultimately in that life and death cycle, there's this greater health and resilience and fertility and land ecosystem that is continuously experiencing and being regenerated, even though individual parts of it are living and dying. But as an overall ecosystem, the carrying capacity, the biodiversity is expanding. And
so I have to ask, there are two questions, and I'm so sorry that this is like right at the end of our time together. I should have calibrated better, but are you still vegetarian or vegan?
I'm not. I was vegetarian. I was vegetarian, mostly vegetarian, vegan for the first 35 years of my life, with the exception of some ice cream and some eggs and things sometimes, and then occasionally eating fish, because I grew up in my teens. I became a fly fisherman, so I had the relationship of catching a fish and harvesting a fish and having that fish become part of me.
So let me just ask, are you saying that vegetarianism and veganism is incompatible with regenerative agriculture?
No.
Thank you.
I'm saying that veganism, the way I frame it, is that plant-based diets, veganism, vegetarianism, is a noble and beautiful commitment. When we're living in an urban world, and mostly choosing what we're consuming, it is a way to consciously consume that has a less destructive and a less resource intensive footprint. But the nuance underneath that is that if we want to regenerate ecosystems, it's not going to be through Impossible Burgers. The idea that, like, just because things are made from plants
doesn't mean they're healthy.
Is a dangerous greenwashing paradigm of superlative kind of mentality. Like, oh, it's made from plants. But no, that a monoculture plant that is grown like soybeans that's sprayed with, neonicotinoids and kills bees and kills everything under that soil, that isn't, there's nothing noble about that. So it is noble to say, I want to lessen my impact. I want to eat lower on the food chain. I don't want to, kill animals in the most overt way. I understand that, because the reality is, on every plate of food, there is death that happened, whether it's plants, and then those plants have been grown in a way that totally denuded what was naturally there. And in turn, there's all kinds of natural species that are being killed off to grow commodity crops. So there's just there's a beautiful philosophical and intention there. But there's a danger of getting too dogmatic in its superlative goodness, without a lot of deeper understanding and investigation of what it took to grow those vegetables. And were those inputs, those inputs actually were explicitly, whether it's blood meal, bone meal, fish emulsion, that many vegetables are grown with, that is just one page before your vegetable was the decomposition of the death of an animal that required for that plant to grow. So there's just there has to be a broader understanding. And when you start to delve into that broader understanding, you see that, one of the greatest ways to restore degraded or desertified land is through the reintegration of grazing animals that can help heal, stimulate, bring back latent seed banks, bring back life to land that's been desertified.
But that doesn't necessarily translate to slaughtering the animals, does it?
Well, it does, but in nature, there's always been a continuous harvest to just have animals living out, procreating with no predator species just didn't exist. And if they don't have a predator species, they actually become kind of lazy and they only eat certain things. They become fussy and they overgraze, and the ecosystem starts to tank. It's actually when they're kind of on their toes and are moving around, and there's a selection, some are being selected off and some are continuing to procreate, that actually creates this healthy, vibrant, alive culture. If those predators are gone, like they showed in Yellowstone National Park, they took away the wolves, and the whole ecosystem just took a total tank, because they were a keystone species that were kind of moving all the other species kind of in this rotation over a piece of land. They started to just hang out in the valleys, and they ate all the forage, and it started to erode, and the banks of the river started to erode, and the whole thing started to, and then they reintroduced the wolves, and the whole thing just got back into this very tight and vibrant system. There's a powerful video called "How Wolves Change Rivers" that is very compelling. I think about 40 million people have watched it on YouTube.
We'll put a link to that on the website as well. So I know that our time is up. I thank you, Ryland, so much for being here. This was such a treat, and we covered so much ground. I'm sorry that it was rushed at the end around regeneration, because I know that could be a conversation in and of itself. But I just want to say thank you. And I want to say thank you to all of you who are watching us and sharing the word and spreading the word, letting people know, and who are committed to making a difference on the planet together. And I want to thank also my co-founder and producer, Scott Billy. And that's it for today. Until next time, live your best life, love the world around you, and together we can save the world.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you for listening to Sustainability Now, solutions to shape a world that works. Visit sustainabilitynow.global for resources related to today's program. And be sure to subscribe, share, and follow us on social media.